We all want to feel peace in our lives. Peace in our choices, our beliefs, our relationships, and our environment. I've learned that this desired contentment is often found through holding on to less. When we pare down what we own, what we consume, and what we value, we're left with what's intentional, a personalized curation of what is important and true and useful to us. I'm Shannon Leyko, and you're listening to Paring Down, a podcast aimed at helping you declutter not only your home, but any area of your life that's overwhelming. Here, we're having interesting and honest conversations about the physical and mental clutter that drowns out what truly matters to each of us. And together, we'll learn how to pare it all down, not for the sake of perfection or becoming rigid, rather so we can move through life with less overwhelm and more joy, wisdom, and peace. Welcome back to Paring Down. I'm so glad to have you here every single week. I say that because I truly mean it. I know that if you are someone who comes back and listens regularly, that is such an honor. There are so many different podcasts and audiobooks that you could be listening to. So the fact that you come back and listen to this week after week just brings me so much joy. I hope that it's truly helpful and that it's just a lot of fun. You know, I had someone say recently that they just kind of appreciated that this podcast is helpful in a way that doesn't feel like it's adding to the overwhelm of the world that we live in right now. And that really is my goal. I want the ideas on this podcast to challenge us to live better without it feeling like one more thing that we're doing wrong or contributing to the negativity that we see in the media constantly, because that's why they use negativity. Our brains are naturally wired to want to be aware of potentially dangerous threats. And the media knows that that's how our brains are wired. And so everything we see is really negative. I have found some really awesome positive news Instagram accounts to follow recently. I will put them in the show notes, the ones that I follow. It's like just one or two. But I've found that seeing that in my feed has really increased my appreciation for people around me. It's given me a lot of hope. And it's just a reminder that while there is a lot of bad going on in the world, there's still a lot of good. We just aren't exposed to it as much. So anyway, I'm just glad to have you here. And I hope that it does feel like a warm hug when you arrive. I haven't mentioned this in quite a while, so I want to remind you that I do have a newsletter. If you really want to have something counteracting, maybe some tempting newsletters with, your favorite stores or whatever it might be in your inbox. And if you think it would be nice to open up your email once a week and see a short little newsletter from me that encourages you to live with less stuff, to focus on a life of intention, then I would love for you to sign up for the Less Express. Each week, I just share with you what's on the podcast with a direct link to listen. I share a quote that's hopefully inspiring when it comes to living with less or not pursuing money, consumption, all of that. I share a little note from me to you. Oftentimes it's just an excerpt from my blog post that week, or it might be something, off the cuff, a little different, but very short little note. And then a decluttering challenge. So it's super easy to digest. It's, has kind of a formula, LESS, listen, excerpt, share, and simplify. So you know what to expect every single week. And I would really love to have you as one of those members of the Less Express. It's free. Obviously, it's just a newsletter. So I will have the link to sign up for that in the show notes as well. Or if it's easier for you to just go on Instagram, just DM me the word newsletter and my little bot will send you the newsletter link to sign up. I also want to tell you guys about a brand new resource that I just released. So I'm sorry for anyone new. I normally don't talk about resources, but these are free. And so I don't want it to sound like I'm an infomercial here, but I do want to tell you about more things that hopefully can help you on your decluttering journey. I've said this before. I'll say it every single time. I am a Christian, but this is not a Christian-based podcast. Everyone is welcome here. In fact, I want this to be a podcast that is listened to by many different perspectives and beliefs. That said, because I am a Christian, sometimes my faith will pop up, whether it's in personal stories that I'm telling on the podcast or even in resources. And so if you are a Christian or are just interested even in different kind of religious perspectives, I created a 7-day Bible study that I just released 2 weeks ago, and it's called Treasures of the Heart, a 7-day Bible study on breaking free from material attachments. In it, I go over a whole bunch of scriptures that help help us better understand what Jesus's perspective was on stuff and money and the expectation for our lives as those of us who call ourselves disciples or followers of Christ. I know for me, I try and live my life according to the Bible. And so this is a huge topic that I think we should take into account if you call yourself a Christian and you are hoping to live a more decluttered life, or even if you're not sure if this is the direction you want to go. We need to see, well, what does Jesus call for our lives? And let that be a motivation. Okay, so Treasures of the Heart, you can also get in the show notes. You can also just DM me 7 days, the number 7, not spelling it out 7, just 7 days on Instagram. And again, my little bot will hook you up. So yeah, the Treasures of the Heart Bible study and the newsletter are 2 things I wanted to share with you today before we dive in, which is on hot takes about minimalism. Now, clearly, I am pro minimalism or decluttering. Minimalism and decluttering are kind of 2 different ideas, but they, kind of fall under the same umbrella, which is just to live with less. Some people will say that minimalism is when you get by with as little as possible, a bed and a desk, if that. And other people will say, no, minimalism is just keeping only what is useful for you. I think there's a lot of concepts like this that don't have a clear definition. And so it's a little complicated to talk about them. Like, I know I did an episode about growing up in a cult, and I brought this up at the beginning. Like, there's no clear definition of what a cult is. There's no clear definition of what minimalism is. Like, these are things that have a lot of subjectivity wrapped up in them. However, overall, I believe in minimalism. I believe that we shouldn't be living with excess. I think that it not only benefits us, it benefits our loved ones and the planet at large. Clearly, I am a fan. However, I do take issue with a couple of kind of rules or ideas that tend to be among the louder voices in the decluttering and minimalism community, or just misconceptions maybe people have. I've already done an episode about myths about decluttering. It's called Busting Myths About Decluttering. It's a fun little episode. But today's a little different. Today are things that you might have heard are a good thing regarding minimalism and decluttering that I can't really get on board with, not because they're inherently bad, although some of them I have stronger feelings about than others, but I just don't agree. So they're hot takes. So we're going to dive into those hot takes today, and I hope that it helps you feel less overwhelmed when it comes to accepting minimalism and know that not everything has to be extreme. I hope it helps you feel motivated to live with less, not from a place of strict rules, but overall intent to live a more intentional life. So let's dive in, shall we? The first 3 are common decluttering rules that I just can't quite get on board with. Okay, so the first one is don't put it down, put it away. I have a hot take on this. I think it's overrated. Sometimes you just need a landing spot for things before you put them away later, right? Systems should work for real life. We're not talking about perfection here. I know that when I walk into the house and my arms are filled with my kids' stuff from the car and water bottles and my backpack and whatever it might be, even some trash, I don't know. I don't have the ability to put everything down immediately where it goes. Right? Like, that's just not realistic. I have to kind of plop the backpacks down in the mudroom, and then I need to go put the trash in the trash can. I need to put my water bottle down on the kitchen counter. That's not really where the water bottle goes, but also a water bottle doesn't really have a home because I take it with me everywhere. Right? I get the concept. Obviously, I'm not a dum-dum. I understand what people mean by don't put it down, put it away. If you pick up a book off the floor that fell onto the ground, don't just put it on the counter, go put it in the bookshelf. I get that concept. I just don't think it's realistic. Most of the time in my life, when I have something in my hands, I have something else I was meaning to do, right? Like, I didn't have time to factor in going and walking to the bookshelf. I'm trying to get a snack into my child before they lose their ever-loving mind. And there was a book on the floor and I picked it up. And I'm not going to walk it to the bookshelf. I'm going to put it on the kitchen island. And then I'm going to cut up an apple. And then I'm going to bring it to my daughter. And then maybe I'll go put the book away. So I try and do it relatively soon, or I really kind of just create what some people call doom piles. I also have a podcast episode about that, but I don't think those are so bad. I take things generally in the direction that they're supposed to go. So even if I'm picking up, let's say, the kitchen, I don't usually put everything back exactly where it's supposed to go that has found its way onto the kitchen island. Do you know what I do with it? I go put it all on the pony wall next to our playroom, which is kind of in the central area of the house. So it's like 5 steps away from the kitchen. And then it's like 10 or 15 steps away from most of the bedrooms. And so usually the stuff that is on our counter is like my kid's stuffed animal that they brought out from their bed. It's homework. It's hair ties and bows that my daughter ripped out of her sweet little head. It's, sunglasses that need to get back into the car. It's all of that stuff. So what I do with it is I just go like plop it where it is one step closer to going where it needs to go. And then usually some point in the day, I go clear off that pony wall. And I actually put aside time. 5 minutes is usually all it takes or less to go put everything back all at once. It is just so inefficient in my mind to go individually put everything back the second that you see it or pick it up. I'd rather put it all in one place and then set aside specific time to do that all at once, where I'm like, okay, yes, I'm going to walk my little legs to my son's room where the kids' bathroom also happens to be. And I'm going to grab off the pony wall, hair ties for my daughter, because those go in the bathroom, the little trinket my son took out of his room, his sweatshirt that needs to go back in his drawer, and whatever else is on the pony wall that goes back to my son's room. If I had put everything away the second I had it instead of putting it down, it would have taken me 5 trips to my son's room instead of just 1. So I just put it all on the pony wall and take individual trips when I have set aside the time to do that. So that's how I operate. And so therefore, I don't stress that my house is not perfectly put away. That's kind of part of this, right? I don't think that it's realistic or healthy to think that your house needs to be perfectly picked up 24/7. Maybe if you don't have kids, I don't know. I don't really know that life. And before I had kids, I was in my 20s and I was feral. So like I've never lived in a home that was always perfectly picked up, as an adult. And I'm just really okay with that. And I think that's a piece of decluttering that can be problematic, is we think our homes need to be perfect all the time. And our homes are meant to be lived in. Like, it's really okay if your pony wall has a bunch of stuff that needs to get put away later. Just go put it away later. But you don't have to make the house look perfect every second that you're living in it. That sounds exhausting to me. So anyway, there's my rant. There's my hot take on don't put it down, put it away. Second hot take, number 2, is the 20/20 rule. You might have heard about this. It's some people say if you can replace it in under 20 minutes for less than $20, then you don't need to keep it. Okay, well, this is wasteful in 2 different ways. It's wasteful in terms of material items, and it's wasteful in terms of finances. So yes, technically, could I replace my backup water bottle in under 20 minutes for less than $20, or my kids' water bottles? Yeah, probably. But first of all, anything can be replaced in under 20 minutes these days because of Amazon. Okay, it takes 2 seconds to get on Amazon and order something. So I think that's a really dangerous pattern to get in. Not only that, you're just creating more consumption, right? Like decluttering, but then over consuming to make up for the clutter you've gotten rid of is so wasteful and like really damaging to the environment, which is a big issue. And then beyond that, it's wasteful with your money. Why would I spend $20 over and over again? I think that's silly. I think I'm just going to keep a backup water bottle, thank you very much, for when my kids inevitably lose theirs, or when I inevitably leave mine somewhere and have to go back and get it, or I just don't feel like washing my dumb water bottle. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's nice to have a backup. So for these just in case items, I just don't think the 20/20 rule is very ethically sound. I also think it really adds to the sense of elitism. I feel like I said that really weird. Being elitist? Being elitist when it comes to minimalism, right? Not everyone can afford $20. And you can say, oh, it's just a rule. And I'm a big fan of like, take what you hear, apply it to your life in a way that matters for you and that applies to you, and let go of the rest. Like, I don't think every single rule has to apply to us. And if it doesn't, it's a bad rule. However, this one in particular, I take issue with because $20 is not a small amount of money. And it goes to show that the minimalist decluttering community as a whole tends to cater towards people who have more money. And yet, if you listen to the episode I did with Aubrey recently called Is Decluttering Only for the Financially Secure? I actually believe that decluttering and minimalism benefits those who are not financially secure even more, because those are the folks who are already incredibly overwhelmed in life. They have a lot more stressors happening in life for the most part if they're not financially secure, and all the stuff in their home on top of it is only adding to their overwhelm. And I'm not going to get into how I don't think that decluttering is wasteful at all financially. In fact, I think it's a good financial decision. Not going to get into that right now, but I just take issue with anything that kind of steers the minimalist conversation only toward a specific set of people who have more money. So yeah, not a big fan of the 20/20 rule where you replace it in 20 minutes if it's less than $20. No, thank you. Number 3 hot take, the 1-year rule. Okay, this is the last of the rules that I take issue with. So this 1-year rule is if you haven't used it in a year, let it go. There are always exceptions. And I guess that's the whole idea, right? It's like generally use it as a rule, but understand that there's exceptions and there's flexibility. And I think that's how most people deliver this. I don't think anyone says there's no exception to any rule. But I will say that I personally cannot apply this rule easily as a military wife. And so I just don't use it as a rule whatsoever. Like there's plenty of seasonal clothing I haven't worn since I've lived in Florida because I lived in Alaska before here and I didn't know where we would be moving after Florida. Turns out we're moving back to Alaska. So you know what? I'm really glad I kept a lot of it. But you don't have to live or move a lot like a military spouse in order for things to be seasonal, right? Clothing, whatever kind of yard stuff you need, gardening things, whatever. If you haven't used it in a year, it doesn't mean you're never going to use it again. I mean, a good example is even my podcasting equipment. I wanted to start a podcast way back in 2015. I think 2015, 2016, I did start a podcast. I only did it for like 5 episodes, but man, I really wish I'd stuck with that before the podcast world got oversaturated. Anyway, but that to be said is that I didn't use this podcasting equipment for like 6 years until I started paring down or more. I don't know. I can't do math. But the point is that I had it for a long time. However, I always knew in my heart I would start a podcast someday. It was important to me. It, reflects my skill set really well. I just hadn't landed on a topic that I felt comfortable committing to until I realized that decluttering and intentional living was the answer. Anyway, the point is that I'm really glad that I didn't get rid of all of my podcasting stuff. This I get can be a slippery slope because then you're like, well, what if I want to start a podcast? What if I want to start brewing beer again? What if I want to start sewing again? And then you hold on to everything. And so I know that that's a really slippery slope. I'm not saying that you should hold on to everything. That's not what this podcast is about. This podcast is about letting go. However, keep the bare minimum of the things that you are very confident, you're like super passionate about that you will probably use again, even if it hasn't been used in the last year. I think this is a matter of knowing yourself too. Like I think I know myself pretty well to be like, I like the idea of using a Cricut, but I'm never going to actually do that. So I declutter the Cricut versus I am passionate about starting a podcast someday. So I kept the podcasting equipment. And I think that's the beauty of decluttering. When you look at all your stuff, I looked at the podcasting equipment, I looked at the Cricut or whatever, is really getting in tune with yourself. And so that can be hard. It's harder for some people than for others, right? Like I think my husband wants to keep everything. He thinks he's like passionate about every possible hobby that he has had, and had stuff for and had a hard time getting rid of it. So I'm not saying that it's easy for everybody, but I really do think that it's okay to say, this is really important to me. And it's okay that I haven't done this in the last year. And then of course there's like special occasion things, right? Like I don't go to many weddings these days, but I'm not going to buy a new wedding dress, or not a wedding dress, but a dress to wear to a wedding. When I have 2 really cute cocktail dresses, I have not worn them in over a year, but I will probably go to a wedding again. I'm not at a stage in my life where I feel like I need to buy a new dress every time I go to a fancy occasion. I would love to put back on one of the dresses I already have and I haven't worn it in a year. So, special occasion stuff. And like I said, moving as a military family, there are just things that we aren't going to use even while we live somewhere. We hold on to our big TV box. Now we have this space to do that. Again, exceptions, rules, know thyself, know thy space, respect where you live. But like there are certain things that are just easier to pack back up in their original boxes. And so we have some of those. So that's an exception. If you're going to be living somewhere for 5 to 10 years or longer, don't do this. But if you're moving every 2 to 3 years like me, then sometimes you're just not going to use things because they're only useful for the moving experience. Anyway, I'm not going to keep going. This is the 1-year rule. And you know what? That's my hot take. I don't have to like it. You can tell me why you love it, why you love the 2020 rule, why you love don't put it down, put it away. And if it is working for you, what I'm going to say is keep using that rule. These are my hot takes, okay? But maybe they make you feel a little bit better if you agree with them. Hey guys, it's time for your ad break. Each week I like to say a huge thank you for your graciousness that these are part of the podcast. Here we go. Okay, number 4, not a rule. We're getting off the rules. Number 4 hot take is, you know what? I love Marie Kondo's Sparking Joy. It gets a bad rap. I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, Marie Kondo, like it's so impractical, and sparking joy, like that's so dumb. A spatula doesn't spark joy. And listen, do I think that taking everything out all at once in the massive fashion that she kind of does, as you can see on her show on Netflix, do I think that that can overwhelm people and paralyze them? Yes. Yes, I do. I think that part of why her framework really works is because there's a sense of accountability when she shows up, or one of her trained, employees shows up or does Zoom calls with you and follow up and accountability, then great. However, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. First of all, her book is so inspiring. If you haven't read The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, it's a fantastic book. Second of all, I think this idea of sparking joy is such a fun way to look at our stuff. I can say that, I'm looking at my bed right now, that my comforter sparks joy in me because it is cozy and fluffy and white, and it makes me feel like I am in a luxurious hotel. I can look at my water bottle that is sitting next to my podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, here it is. It is my hospital cup. Well, it's actually not my exact hospital cup. I just loved drinking out of a hospital cup after I had a child, that I was like, I'm never drinking out of anything else again. Stanley who? No thanks. I want my giant hospital cup. And so when mine broke, my husband ordered me 2 more hospital cups. So these are intentionally ordered hospital cups, not even directly from a hospital stay. And anyway, the point is it clearly brings me joy. This is what I want to be drinking my water out of. So I don't have a bunch of random water bottles. I know which one I love, and I'm drinking out of it. I have this coaster in front of me for when I have my chai lattes while I'm recording. And it is sparkly Kate Spade that my aunt gave to me when I was in high school. And honestly, when I got it, I was annoyed because I was tired of always being seen as the, glittery pink one. I was like, there's more to me than just being a dramatic glitter person. And then I kept it for a couple of years, and I was like, you know what? There's not more to me. This is who I am. I love sparkly glitter stuff. And so I've kept this Coast Guard. Oh my gosh. You can tell I'm a Coast Guard wife. This coaster for, 15, 20 years now. Nope, definitely longer than that. Oh, gosh, I'm so old. I'm 36, 20 years. I was probably 16 when my aunt gave this to me. Anyways, it brings me joy. That's the point of that whole story. Sorry, is that it brings me joy. I can look around and things spark joy. The desk I'm sitting at, you want to hear something cool? I don't think I've ever told you guys this before. When I was trying to figure out where I was going to record the podcast after I was in my closet, if you are OG people, I used to record in my closet. I was like, oh, I need to get a desk. You know what? Instead of going on Facebook Marketplace and trying to find a desk for recording my podcast, Erin and I realized my mom's old sewing table was being used as a side table in our guest room, but it didn't really work in there. And so now I record every day on my mom's old sewing table. This is now my podcasting table, and it brings me so much joy. My mom sat here and made my prom dress from scratch. My mom sat here and made my costumes when I was growing up in musical theater. And now I sit here and record this podcast. Everything in my life, I feel like, because of the decluttering process, sparks joy, because I've intentionally decided to keep this. And since I've decided to keep this, I don't have the need for clutter. I don't have the need to go buy another table. You know what I mean? And so I hope that you use this idea of what sparks joy. A spatula can spark joy. When I pick up the spatula I like, because I have a favorite spatula because I am 36 years old, I'm happy. It sparks joy versus when I pick up the one that is a little bit too thick and really annoying to flip pancakes with. So I only kept the one I really love. I think it's a smart way to declutter. So if anyone says that, oh, sparking joy, whatever, and you're like, you're the kind of person that just doesn't like Harry Potter because everyone else does. Sometimes things are popular because they work, because they're great. And Marie Kondo's Sparking Joy is great, and so is Harry Potter. Okay? Hot take number 4. Hot take number 5 is that sentimental items are not clutter if they bring you joy. Staunch minimalists will say that we should get rid of basically all sentimental items because they are not useful. And I did an episode about sentimental items, and I think there is a lot of power in recognizing that these good memories and nostalgia don't live in the stuff always, right? Like you can still remember, I still remember my mom vividly, and I will always miss her. And I don't need her belongings for her to have been real and for those memories to have been real. However, sometimes sentimental items are still really powerful. And I think we should all keep the ones that are most powerful for us. I actually wrote down like 4 reasons I think we need to keep some sentimental items. The first is they help preserve personal and family history. And that matters. It's important to know where we came from. I think it's such a privilege to know where we came from and how that affects our lives. It respects the world at large and our own family line, and it respects the people who came before us. It gives us a lot of information about why we might be the way we are, what privileges we have, what struggles we have. These are important things to know. And so I'm a big fan of preserving personal and family history, even old letters, like having my mom's signature on the cards that she wrote me when I was a young adult, just to encourage me when I was at college or whatever. Like these things really matter to me, not just like for historical accuracy of the family, but also for kind of my number 2 point, which is that these things provide comfort and emotional stability. And that's okay that we need that. We're humans. We're not robots. We need some emotional comfort. These sentimental items can really ground us and remind us that we're loved, remind us of past joys, keep the happiness of living alive, So that's my second point, is they provide emotional comfort and stability. Number 3 is that they can be a source of identity and self-expression. I don't think there's anything wrong with our belongings telling the story of who we are, of where we've been. If it's a memento or a sweater that we remember buying when we were on a trip, or because somebody that we love gave it to us, there's a source of identity here. And I have another point on this kind of later, but I think that when we get so minimalist that we don't allow belongings to be a form of self-expression, then we are becoming less individual and unique and creative, and we lose the fact that we all have these like different fingerprints, and it's an exciting part of humanity, of being alive, to be able to express that. And the last point here about sentimental items is they can really be used to foster gratitude. So this kind of goes along with that emotional stability piece, but it goes deeper. They are reminders of moments that we've cherished, people that we value most, and they remind us to be grateful for those things moving forward. One of the impractical things that I kept of my mom's, I don't have many things, but I have her bike helmet. She was a triathlete and she had this pink bike helmet. She would wear it on her races, and her sunglasses. Ooh, it's hard for me even to talk about them because they're so her. I just see her so vividly wearing these things and on her run. Like I can imagine the rest of the outfit that she had on, before the biking portion, or it just brings into view, it represents my mom on a bigger level, maybe outside of the triathlete or the triathlon, but it represents, her being out in the kayak in our back inlet where we lived. And when I would see her at the mailbox after a run and I could see the 2 clips. My mom didn't run with her hair in a ponytail. She ran with these 2 like clips holding back the front of her hair. She kind of had shorter hair. And I see her vividly. And those sunglasses and that helmet, they make me so grateful for my mom. And they also then make me grateful moving forward when I see my daughter riding her bike and learning to ride a bike a couple of months ago. Wow, I'm so emotional right now, but that's a good thing, right? That's the point of sentimental items. Like I see my mom, I see my daughter with her little pink helmet on, and it's like a circle of life moment. And I have no regrets keeping my mom's pink helmet that I occasionally open this box where I have some of her things and just look at. And it's not useful and I'm not wearing it and it's not displayed on my wall. But you know what? I'm glad I have it. So you know what? That's my hot take, is that sentimental items are not clutter if they bring you joy, as long as, of course, you've really narrowed them down to a reasonable amount that's not cluttering up your space. Number 6, hot take. Aesthetic minimalism is actually problematic. And the reason I say this is because the majority of kind of influencers in the decluttering space have these very, neutral kind of palettes. And that's fine. If that's what you genuinely like, I love it. But the problem is we don't see many people with like bold homes expressing that they don't have clutter. And those 2 things are so different. I mean, I've talked about this in the myths episode, that you can have crazy wallpaper and really awesome gallery art, gallery wall, type art all over your walls. And that is not clutter. That's just an expression of like home design and a kind of an expression of yourself, like we were talking about earlier. Clutter is the stuff that just gets in the way. And I think when all we see is aesthetic minimalism, it misses the point of actual minimalism, intentional living that says you're supposed to be doing what you want to do. Not what everyone else says you should keep and buy and wear, but keep only what you love, right? It also creates these unrealistic expectations. And so people feel like bad about themselves or their houses if they don't have this aesthetic minimalism. And you just don't need it. You don't need it in order to live a life of intention regarding what you own. It can turn minimalism into a consumer trend, right? People replacing their belongings with better or more like aesthetic minimalist versions of them, trading colorful furniture for everything that needs to be neutral. So I think it's problematic when it comes to that. I think, like I said, it focuses us more on appearance over intentionality. I think that is problematic. And the third is that it's just not practical. It's just not practical for everyone. Real homes get messy. Like we talked about at the beginning, real people have kids, we have pets, we have hobbies, we have personal preferences, and it doesn't all fit into the all white, empty countertop aesthetic. Some people find joy in patterns or color or even collections. And that doesn't mean that they're not able to live a decluttered life. You can have a collection of ceramic birds and live intentionally. It's not mutually exclusive. Just don't have them tucked away in boxes where you are not enjoying them, and don't have them taking up every single surface so that nothing else gets any, recognition. Like, right? That's when your space becomes cluttered. But if you want to have a bookshelf and on that bookshelf is nothing but ceramic birds, then ma'am, I think you should, because I think that's cool and that represents who you are. You've intentionally decided that you're the ceramic bird lady. And you know what? I prefer that over someone who doesn't know who they are. And so they're just like, I'm going to just do what everyone else is doing and buy all neutral, beige, white, everything. And they don't have a sense of who they are. That's a problem. You're not really living. You're on autopilot trying to just imitate what you see someone else doing. So it's not that the neutral white stuff is bad, but it's bad when it becomes this source of imitation and nobody's allowed to think or act or design for themselves in a decluttered way. So anyway, I think aesthetic minimalism is problematic. Number 7, hot take. You can definitely accept gifts even if you know they're just clutter. I've been seeing this a lot lately about how we're just supposed to say no. No, sorry, that's, clutter. No, say thank you, please, and accept the gift. And then you can get rid of it. I mean, I'm a big fan of that. I have a whole episode about it. And you can absolutely have conversations with people ahead of time, especially if you are on that level with them, that it's like comfortable to talk to them. I have, like I said, the whole episode. I don't know what number it is. I'll put it in the show notes. But it's called the fear and guilt of decluttering gifts. And so I'm all about that preparation to try and ensure that you're not getting cluttery gifts. I am all about getting rid of them if they're clutter, but you can accept them. If somebody has already bought it for you, I just don't see why it's more important to say no to them. And there's always exceptions, but I just think that relationships are more important than clutter always. And I'm just not going to say no to a gift. I'm not going to. I will then declutter it later. I don't have any qualms about that, but I think you can accept gifts, even if you know they're clutter. Just say thank you, okay? And then move on with your life and don't cause interpersonal conflict because you're setting this boundary that doesn't need to be set because it's a self boundary, right? You don't have to, a boundary doesn't have to be what you're forcing someone else to do. It's what you've decided you're going to do. So if you've decided you're not going to keep clutter in your house, then you're probably not going to keep the gift. But just accept it because you don't need to put that on them. That's not their choice in life, Let them do what they want to do and it makes them feel good to give you something. So just accept it and get rid of it later. Now, if it happens over and over again, if your mom or your mother-in-law does this all the time, have those conversations outside of the moment. But remember, you can't control other people and all you can control is yourself. And I don't know about you, but I want to be a very gracious, loving human. And that means sometimes accepting things that I don't really want in my house. But again, if you want kind of more details about how to handle that, you can go to the other episode. Number 8, hot take. I think printed photos are better than digital photos. Do they take up more space? Yes, they do. But I think digital photos go to die. We never see them again. Your phone isn't backed up and then it falls into the toilet. And then you never have photos of when your child was a baby. I think printed photos, weirdly enough, are less destructible than digital photos simply because they don't just up and disappear or get forgotten about. I have digital photo albums. Wow, this is definitely turning into a go back and listen to this kind of an episode. I don't mean for it to be, but I do have an episode all about what I do for decluttering photos in your phone and also physical photos in your home. I'll put that in the show notes. But that is my hot take. I don't think that everything should just be stored digitally so that our spaces have less stuff in them. I would rather have some curated photo albums. I have 2 large 4x6 albums that hold like 500 or something pictures in each. And I look through those actually pretty regularly. Even just this weekend, my brother and sister-in-law were in town and my niece said something and I was like, oh, I have a picture of you doing that when you were a baby. I pulled out the 4x6 album, found the picture of my niece when she was a baby and showed it to her, and also sat there with my brother and sister-in-law for 10 or 15 minutes going through all of these photos. And there are pictures of when my brother and I were kids, and there's pictures from our wedding. We have all types of pictures in this album of when their kids were little, right? I just have so many. And so I love showing that to them. And so I really do think that printed photos are better. So now moving forward, I don't have 4x6s. Most of those albums are kind of older pictures, but for our family yearbooks, I have them printed every year in a chat books yearbook. And I love flipping through those. My kids love looking at them, and they're printed photos. They're not 4x6s. They're like, in an album on a page, but they're still printed and they're off of my phone. And do they take up space? An album takes up space. Yes. But at least I'm enjoying the photos. Otherwise, what was the point of taking the photos to begin with if they're just like on my iPhone and I never look at them again? You know what I mean? So that's my hot take. I think printed photos are better than digital photos. Hot take number 9. Impractical things are part of what makes childhood fun. Okay. My kids are not deprived, and I don't want yours to be either. They can have a giant stuffed animal the size of a real polar bear. I think I used that example in a recent episode too, about a polar bear sized stuffed animal. The reason I've used that twice is because I grew up with a polar bear stuffed animal named Bart, and I loved him, and we still have him. My daughter has him in her closet, as a matter of fact, not just like sitting there never used, but he just lives. She has a kind of big closet. Anyway, so Bart lives in there. He's still a member of the family, but giant stuffies make their life so magical. My son has a rocket ship bed. There's nothing minimalist about that. It is a rocket ship my husband built that is spray painted silver, and it has a huge slide. He has to slide into his closet because there wasn't enough room in the room for the slide. It's a long story. So we had to take his closet doors off, and he slides into his closet to get out of bed. That is not minimalist, okay? My daughter has a 6-foot cardboard cutout of Taylor Swift in her room. Not minimalist at all. But these things are what make our kids' childhood special. Do they need all of the toys? Absolutely not. They will play better without a bunch of toys. I am a big believer in paring down our kids' stuff, but that doesn't mean that they can only keep what's practical or only open-ended toys, right? I believe in open-ended toys. Those are most of what they have. But you know what they also have? They have a whoopee cushion, which actually is kind of an open-ended toy. Ba-doom-sh. Anyway, it's like sometimes impractical things are what make childhood fun. And yeah, my home is going to have more stuff in it right now than if I didn't have kids. I'm super down with that. So that's my minimalist hot take, is that when you have kids, sometimes you don't have things that are super practical inside of your home and for them, and that's okay. Just don't have so much of it that, you can't move around or that they don't know what to play with. All right, last one, guys. Number 10. Decluttering doesn't fix all inner turmoil. That's my hot take. I do think it can be a catalyst and start a lot of meaningful change in your life because it forces you to start being more intentional. It forces you to face those what if questions and kind of decide what kind of person you want to be and what, when you look at your consumption, what are my values? Why am I buying so much? It makes you kind of come to terms with a lot of hard questions. And so I do think that decluttering can help you improve a lot of that inner turmoil, but it doesn't fix everything. Okay. Only a relationship, in my opinion, right? Again, I said this at the beginning. Sometimes my faith comes up, in my opinion, and in my experience, my personal experience, I think only a relationship with God can fix a lot of things. I think therapy can fix a lot of things. I think strong, healthy relationships can fix a lot of inner turmoil. Those things are really important in life. And sometimes decluttering just doesn't fix those things. It won't make your partner, care about you more. Okay. It won't make you have a better relationship with your parents. All of that. Sometimes maybe it will. I don't know. There's certain ways. Everything is all interconnected. But at the same time, I just think that sometimes decluttering and minimalism is kind of sold as this fix all, that suddenly you're going to be content and happy in life and nothing's going to get you down or bother you because you know what's most important. And sure, yes, I obviously wouldn't have this podcast if I didn't think decluttering was an incredibly powerful source of agency in your life and self-improvement and joy and contentment, all of those things. Yes, that is very true, but it doesn't fix everything. In fact, if you take it to another extreme, then you're still letting the stuff have the power over you. If you feel stressed out by having too much, or even if it's not too much anymore, even if you're just like, oh, it's just one extra thing my child brought home from school. But if that stresses you out because you need to be so minimalist that you don't want one extra thing in the house, then you're still letting the stuff control you. You're still using a lack of stuff as a form of control. You're not actually happy and content. Right. So to me, a sign of having decluttered and approached minimalism the, right way would be that it doesn't stress you out, that you're not a perfectionist about it. And that to me shows that is healed more inner turmoil than not having anything at all and being okay with that too. I don't know if that makes any sense. But anyway, the idea is that decluttering doesn't fix all your problems. Okay. So that's my hot take. I will always try and post, inspirational stuff about decluttering on my Instagram. I think other people do that too, because we want to encourage you to let go of stuff, but don't get it twisted and think that this is the answer to all your problems. That's not how life works. All right. I hope you enjoyed those hot takes. You probably disagreed with me on some of them, and hopefully the other ones made you feel seen and heard, And ultimately, I just hope that if you are on your decluttering journey, you remember not to get caught up and become so rigid about the way you're doing things that it misses the point of why you're doing this, which is for more freedom and joy and levity and less stress. Thank you so much for being here. And next week, oh my gosh, guys, I cannot wait for you to hear this episode because it's with my brother who works with celebs and famous speakers, motivational speakers. And he books them. He's a booking agent. So you're going to hear all about that next week. And he certainly has a really interesting exposure to the self-improvement world. And he helps us learn how we can take all of this very widely known advice or motivational speeches and apply them to our lives, how to be discerning with what we hear. And he and I also dive into how losing our mom and grief has affected our decision to live more intentionally. I think you're going to love it. And it was really fun to have him on. So I just can't wait for you guys to hear him because I love my brother. So that's for you next week. And I'll see you then. Bye. You just listened to an episode of Paring Down with me, Shannon Leyko. If you enjoyed the show, it would mean the world if you can leave a review wherever you listen and share this episode with a friend. Those reviews really are what keeps a podcast on its feet for the long haul, and I will read every single one with a huge smile on my face. So thank you ahead of time. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe. Also, be sure to follow along on Instagram at paring_down, where I offer lots of tips and inspiration for paring down, along with what's new here on the podcast. Till next time.